I'd like to introduce our speaker, Gwenny. Please give a warm welcome. Gwenny is an expert in SRE, cloud and DevOps. She's a career changer with a background in music and linguistics. She's also a Google developer expert for GCP. Tonight she's going to be talking about generative AI using Bard.
Hi everybody, nice to see you all. I can't see very well. I've just got to pull the screen across. I am here from Melbourne, so thank you for having me. I've had delicious food already, which is great. I did the Uber Eats in my hotel room while doing my slides. That's how I roll. I just wanted to... the full screen. What was the full screen thing? Sorry, I've got it extended. So I'll just give you a moment to go to the Slido if you want to. It's just, if you have any questions, I've also invited comments if you would like to share comments with all of us, because I think these kind of topics, we can learn from each other a lot, and they're developing so fast. It's already developed so fast since I'd initially started kind of researching it. And it's only been, Bard specifically, it's only been months, right? And 2 weeks since the really big update. So yes, I'm Gwenny. I work at the moment as, it's a principal engineer / DevOps coach role, but they've gotten rid of all our jobs, so I won't be doing that for much longer, but that's okay. And I'm a GDE and GCP. And yeah, I offered many cloud and DevOps topics for tonight, but everyone was like, no, this one's good. So it's a popular topic at the moment. I'll put the code up a few times throughout the presentation, and if you just have any questions or comments, you can pop them in there and I'll try and refer back and forth throughout. I wanted to start the question with what is generative AI, but I just remembered I wanted to just find out who I'm talking to a little bit first so I can tailor what I'm talking about. So would you mind just showing me who here is working in industry and in a large enterprise, a medium-sized company, startup? Thank you. And any students? Yay, the future. What about people in terms of areas? Are there people in cloud and DevOps? In machine learning, in data, devs, usually the majority. Yeah, awesome, thank you. And some other miscellaneous, I'm guessing. Okay, cool. So we're a very diverse group, that's great. I wanted to start with this question, what is generative AI? Because I was getting myself confused as I researched, because I was but why do they call Bard conversational AI again? And I kept getting confused about it. And then I was further confused because Bard lied to me about it. So I guess the initial kind of experiment I wanted to start with for this talk was to see just how much I could get out of it in terms of for my day job. I've been using ChatGPT a lot. Have other people been using ChatGPT? No? I really recommend the plugins. Yes, I'm a GDE, but I don't have to I don't have to tell you to use Google stuff. It's totally my opinion. And I strongly believe I'm sure that Bard can do all that and more, and it's just not been released yet. But yeah, I've been using ChatGPT a lot in my daily life for schedules, gym routines, stuff like that. Not that I have gone to the gym lately, but that's fine. But I wanted to think about it from your perspective, how you might want to use it at work if you haven't been trying it. A lot of you, if you're in enterprise, you might be like me at a company that's banned it. And I think that's probably sensible for a lot of enterprises, given the risks at the moment. So also, I guess it's how we can use it to just build our skills or to learn, and what we might use it for and what it's performing well with. this will change so quickly, as you know. But yeah, I asked it to summarize, just if you can't see up the back, a table summarizing types of generative AI, including conversational AI and chatbots, because I wanted to see if it would make the distinction. And you may not be able to see if you're at the back on the sides, but in the conversational AI group, it put ChatGPT and it also put Bard and Lambda. So I was kind of like, I don't know if I agree with that. So in terms of the original question of generative AI, Payam kind of touched on it. It's when we're using AI to create content based on a prompt, basically. And that content can be multiple forms. So as we know with the latest Bard update, for example, there's images. It handles images. It can be like sound. So I did like a voice prompt. A lot of it is text. So, sorry, I'll just show you one more thing about that question too. And then the reason that I think that matters is because I feel like I've seen as well in the releases with Bard, I don't know if you've been reading much about them, but I feel like Bard is getting more heat than ChatGPT does for like mistakes or like things it's doing wrong. And I'm like, I don't think that's fair because they're designed for different purposes, right? They're fundamentally different. So ChatGPT was designed as generative AI. It is for that purpose, to create content, whereas Bard is a conversational AI. So it was trained on dialogue. It sits on top of the internet. It's accessing like live information essentially, and it is trained to converse. And I don't know what their like longer term strategy is, but a lot of these companies that are coming out with the competitors. So I also asked it to give me a table. This was a voice prompt. It picked up the voice prompt really well. I asked it to give me a table that compared like Bard, ChatGPT, it missed that, Claude, and any other generative AI tools, because I was also hearing Claude is starting to kind of be an interesting competitor as well. And I forgot my point, so I'll just move back to this. Sorry. Oh, dear. The table here as well. Oh, yeah, that it's like the different purposes. But anyway, it's okay. I'm talking more about it later as well. So you can see here, it's kind of, yes, it can do the table, which is great. I remembered the point. It was that what it's feeling to me like the purpose of these kind of tools are, and Claude is very specifically this as well, is that it's going to be that kind of AI we talk to essentially, like intelligent AI. But we don't know that, I guess. So did it give me the table I wanted? Like, no. I was wanting it to give me the kind of insights and the differences so that I could give you like a useful kind of snapshot of when things developed, what the milestones were, because things are happening so quickly. And it's, for me, I'm kind of losing track when I'm comparing them. I'm kind of like, oh, which one can do that better again? So a lot of the comparisons I read with code, for example, are saying ChatGPT can write code better in some languages, but then Bard can help debug better, is what I'm seeing most commonly. But it's really hard to get that information. So it is evolving really quickly. And in the last update, for example, these two screenshots from Bard on the left, they're iterating really fast. And or even the model, like I don't know if you're aware, they changed it from Lambda to Palm 2. I think most likely, like for the reason Payam was talking about, just the kind of compute power that's needed, just the massive memory use. I don't see a lot of conversation about that as well, about the kind of environmental impact. I find that really frustrating with conversations in tech. So I'm hoping they kind of all go a bit more in that direction as well and provide more transparency around that. But yeah, I was just showing the kind of updates on the left. They've already added these kind of abilities to share your responses. You can see in that top left screenshot, you can just go straight into Google. You can share things with friends. You can say whether you liked or didn't like it. You've got the option of 3 responses in Bard, which is kind of nice. But I also looked at some of them. For example, the first thing I looked at that I'll show you in a sec was like top 10 CI/CD risks. I wanted to see like how it would come up with kind of general information like that in the industry. And in the 3 options, the only changes were like it did CI/CD with like a hyphen in the middle, and CI/CD with a dash in the a that in the middle, a slash, and then with no slash. And I'm like, that's not really like 3 different options, but sure. On the right is Claude. I just thought that was worth pointing out because they're using, it's a little bit of a different approach. So they're trying to actually kind of, instead of having any combination of human like checking the responses when they're doing reinforcement learning or any other combination of like training, they're trying to have it all within like within the process of the model itself. Sorry. And is generative or conversational AI true AI? Who says yes? True AI meaning artificial general intelligence. Who says yes? Who says no? Who doesn't care? when I career changed, I did a web dev boot camp. That was like what I did before I went into DevOps and cloud. And we had a lecturer and he was just like a psycho about this. He was like, no AI we have today is true AI. And I was just like, I couldn't remember this. It sounds so important. And like no one else cares. But technically, no, like it's not general AI in the sense that it can do what other humans can do. And I tested whether Bard could answer this as well because I wanted a picture for the slides. They were getting boring. They were just all black and white. I was like, give me a picture of true AI. And it was just like, I can't, it doesn't exist yet. So I guess that was a good answer. But yeah, essentially when AI can do the level of reasoning and kind of have that knowledge where it might appear like a god to us is what it theoretically is artificial general intelligence in some schools of thought. So all of the AI we have here is really like it's essentially machine learning. But I just thought I'd point that out. It's just something for us to think about when we're in the industry as well, and as we see AI keep evolving and it's evolving so quickly. And how can we use Bard in our tech roles? I'm just going to check the questions if there's any. I don't think there's any so far, so that is fine. I'll just refresh it. And what I thought I would do here, I didn't want to do it live in case it was like anything happened with the internet, but it was pretty quick for everything. Just, I don't know how much people have played around with Bard. So I did like that. Someone's asked how to better provide answers. So prompts, yeah, we can talk about that. I did have to do that a lot and I've shown it a little bit. Excuse me while I just click back. You can also like pop your hand up if you have a question in the moment as well. Oh, I like mentioned an internet problem and it broke. I guess I'll talk to the question how to provide better answers while I just scroll back through. With some things like this, I just said like, what are the current top 10 CI/CD risks? It was very quick and very clear in the answer. But when I started asking it coding questions, it was difficult. And a lot of times it would say like, I can't do that. I'm like, you can. I've read that you can do this. And you'd like just repeat that like multiple times and then eventually be like, oh yeah, I can do this. I'm like, why did you just waste both of our time? So I started general and I was wondering, is it going to be pulling relevant information for the industry, particularly when it's topics like security or like pipeline security, which are kind of, I see really big gaps at the moment that people aren't focusing on enough. In case you didn't know as well, you know OWASP now also have a top 10 CI/CD risks, not just application security risks. So if you haven't looked at it, that's a really good resource. OWASP, like OWASP. One of the criticisms as well with Bard has been that it doesn't always obviously provide the sources of the information, whereas ChatGPT tends to provide that information more quickly and like more visibly and more readily. Although I also saw someone's code demo where Bard was kind of able to highlight, you could highlight a bit of code and it would show the source with the link, because theoretically like Bard has that access straight away, right? Whereas ChatGPT doesn't. So in case you don't know that distinction as well, ChatGPT was trained up to, I think it's 2021, November. So the data is only up to there that it was pre-trained on. Whereas with Bard, we're going to the internet, like as of like this moment in time. So to me, that's a huge like distinction, right? It did give me sources when I asked. That top one is the one I was talking about from OWASP. And they were like good sources. So I was like, oh yeah. And this is the one I was talking about where when it says view other drafts in the top right, it would just like do CI/CD or a / with CI/CD and stuff. So it didn't actually change the information. I wanted to see if it could take a screenshot from a page and turn that into code, because one of the things they're talking about a lot is how it can take in images and describe them and get information from them. It did super badly. This was like an article about Worm GPT, which I'll talk about a little bit later, like a kind of malicious, malintent like GPT. And it described like one of the images of someone shaking hands and just talked about how it's people. And I was like, no, that's like nothing to do with it. I thought it would read the text. So I guess it's more specifically focused on images. When I asked it to turn into code, it like theoretically worked. Like I tried it just in an online code editor. But it wasn't very good, and didn't really replicate the screenshot. But when I asked specifically for like an app in a specific language that does a specific function, it was like a little bit better. I didn't go into it and troubleshoot it a lot, but I was like, it's a pretty good start for someone if like they don't know or they're in a new language. So I think that's a use case for all of you if you're like facing new languages or if you've got new people, for example, to give them a head start. When I started going more into platform like infrastructure as code, and this was the part I was also really interested in about how well it would handle that. This was one of the places where I asked it for instructions and it just kept telling me no, like lots of times. But eventually it like was like, yes, you can do this with Terraform. And it was very general. When I asked for something more specific, like a specific piece of infrastructure, it was better. Like the kind of block was a little bit more targeted. So in answer to that question as well, sometimes I think if you give it the more specific prompts, it can do a lot better. And you can also, you'll see later, give it like a link, for example. And I think Paya mentioned that as well. You can give it information to kind of train it, essentially. This was one of those conversations. I remembered working at a large enterprise where they had Terraform 11, which was a disaster. And but everything was a disaster because of that. And they had to just change everything or adapt everything so that it worked with it. And I was like, oh, that could be cool if it can help. But it just kept telling me no. And I was like, I swear you can help with this. And then it gave me the instructions for the server later. This was after this. I just forgot with the screenshot thing. And it added in the instructions. It was really funny for Terraform 11 with this. Where did it go? Oh, maybe I didn't put the screenshot in. It was really funny. There was this bit, it might come later, where it was and if you need to do Terraform 11, and I'm like, now you tell me. So I also wondered if it could just find repos, if it could just find them in terms of scraping data or something. I don't know if that was a ridiculous thing because it couldn't. But then when I asked about the topic, it was fine. So it was very good in all of the times I asked for summaries or piece of information. It's very good with those. And they were generally sound enough information. But I kind of feel I'm well, why wouldn't I just Google it, in some of those cases. But in some of them, it was a little bit more helpful. For example, I guess the code is helpful to have in that one place. So I asked it instead if it could read this was a repository with an encrypted secrets kind of functionality. And so I wondered if it could read that and actually do something for me from that. Secrets management was also something at the place with Terraform 11 that you can imagine was a bit of a challenge to manage. They just had no rigor around it. And it was, I don't know how they haven't had breaches, but well, they probably have had breaches, but they don't know about it. So it could read it. It gave me a really good summary. It added extra details that were kind of relevant. And I started asking as well if it could give me any kind of implementation. So it did give me that. It was like valid bash, and I was like, okay, it's kind of cool. But I was thinking from the perspective of like someone new again, for even like encryption and decryption was really hard, like for people at this place who weren't used to the cloud. It was like a lot of devs who'd been in the industry for like, 20 years just doing Java, had never been exposed to cloud. So that was actually a really big like learning hurdle for a lot of people, even though they'd been devs for a really long time. So it could kind of give that information as well with decryption that was useful. And I found it really useful with this question in terms of, could I use a managed service? It gave, I thought, really good advice. So it talked about SSM from AWS, the Azure and GCP equivalents, and then it went on to HashiCorp and some other kind of open source tooling. So I was like, that's a good, like, well-rounded answer. Cons, I wanted to ask you first. Who has strong opinions on cons? Anyone that they would like to share with us? Like the negatives. Yep. Because do you think, because of the effect it's having on just the general population, like getting used to that term, or like? Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Any other big cons? Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Mm. Maybe it listened to you speak and it was like, she's from the US. Yeah, thank you. That's a good point. Others? I think further to that point, it has just released quite a lot more languages, which is kind of a pro actually, which is nice to see as well, because I don't think ChatGPT has even, in terms of programming languages, I don't think it's got a list, but it does seem to do a lot, and it does seem to handle the older languages better, like legacy languages. Did I see a hand come up and I just continue talking? No, okay. So yeah, there are lots. There are the hallucinations that Payam mentioned is probably for me like the biggest one, because that's probably distracting. Yeah, you do just have to fact check everything. So even to put everything together for this slide, and even things I knew about, I'd read it and be like, damn, is that right? Like, makes you kind of confused sometimes. The biggest one I see as the biggest threat I see is supply chain poisoning. So when we've already seen like a very effective, like malicious ChatGPT kind of AI being built, I've started seeing articles about it like the last kind of week or two. It's worth looking up. If you want to just look up the WormGPT, you'd probably see some of the articles about it. What it just means is, I think the rest of the industry, I don't think has doesn't know the provenance, for example, of all of the artifacts in a build necessarily. Like, we can be really sloppy with that. And it's very easy to just use open source tooling, and it's a good direction, like in theory. And these kind of tools are really great for us to use in theory as well. But I think the risk in terms of, just what we're adding into our supply chain, if we don't already have a lot of tests in our CI/CD pipelines. Also, I'm starting to see more talk of AI pipelines, not just like machine learning training, but like CI/CD pipelines for AI. I feel like that's going to be a really big challenge for all of us to think about. And I wanted to include as well, if anyone doesn't know about this, like supply chain security in terms of DevOps as well at the end of last year was the focus that a lot of DevOps reports were pointing to. So there is a kind of, like a framework that's been published, that's been shared with everyone, that's open source, supply chain levels for software artifacts. And I find the terminology I think it will be hard for organizations to kind of start talking with this language, but this is the direction like we're having to go in. So it's really good for us, if you're in companies, just to start thinking about that thing, so you can kind of help them there and help them start asking, like, do they know everything in their build? Do they know where it came from? Do they know what version like it had in it. Do they know all of the versions? Like we had recently in a company I was at, they just didn't have any dependency management or software currency like management in their pipelines. So they grew from a small startup to a huge global company with like thousands of employees. But all the teams were just kind of doing their own thing, and no one was really checking for like software dependencies. So with things like Log4j, like they'd be in trouble, like if those kind of things happen again. I'm just checking the time. I'm 7:45, right? That I stop? Yeah. Thank you. I had so many of the technology that I kind of stopped this one, but I just thought I'd see if anyone wanted to share any. I've done it, like I said, for workouts. This was one for informational that I kind of wanted to have for you. It did that terribly. So I was asking, like, can you give me milestones, basically a short history of generative AI. It failed dismally. And I asked like a few more questions, and I just couldn't like get the answer I wanted. So I like gave up. But for some of the other information, so for example, I don't know if I put a screenshot, I put in an old article that I wrote, because one of the things I do in ChatGPT is you can put in like an article or a talk that you've done and say, can you produce me some content with this same tone and this same like feel? And I was curious if I could do the same thing here. I don't think I could, but I could have spent more time on it. So yeah, that was something I was thinking about. Is there any way that people... I'll just go to the end slide. Is there any way that people use it that they want to share with us that's like changed their life? Made their lives easier? Yeah. For shopping? Like a shopping list or?
So to start my work, so I just literally tell ChatGPT, say, hey, give me a Monday to Friday plan, and then with minimal purchase, and then I mean, this shop obviously is not accurate, but I mean, this mall, give me the shop I need to go and what item I need to buy there, and it worked.
Oh wow, that's good, because I hate clothes shopping as well. Thank you. So if you missed the start, she was saying she needed to get a wardrobe. She didn't have the clothes, and you put in the days, and it like put out outfits and where to get stuff. Tell them not to do business casual, would be my opinion. No thanks. Any other ways people are using it that they're really finding good? I think the recipe one as well. Yeah.
Just to explain the framework, I'm data philosopher, so I challenged both ChatGPT and Bard. And sometimes I just want to vent myself. I just want to say, instead of abusing some person, even without intention, I just want to just show the truth and just say this thing, and then they say some nonsense, and then I can just freely say nonsense rather than affecting some other person. And then sort of I practice how would I act if it was a real situation.
Has it worked? Like, has it been helpful for that?
Well, at least I hope that I teach them both how to understand how to understand that they're really very biased, extremely biased.
Yeah, definitely. That's an interesting one. I haven't heard that before. Thank you. Any others? Otherwise, I think it's my time. One lucky last share, if anyone has it in them. Yes.
All right, I've done one. I have 2.5 years old daughter. I'm really bad in song and that kind of stuff. I know that. So we went to the zoo. She's excited about some animals like clapping seals and giraffe and that kind of things. And when I'm back home, I can't ask generative AI specifically. None of these things like a dolly. So that generate a song with these words, but in the same rhyme as, I don't know, wheels on the bus or daddy fingers or things like this. It generates a couple of like a sentence for me with those words that she loves with the same rhymes. So literally makes my life really easy. Every day I come up with a new song for her based on those things that she loves. That really helps.
I love it. One for all the parents and babysitters. Cool. Thanks for your sharing. Oh, sorry, I forgot to change my name. I'm Gwenny, and I'm not that person. Thank you very much for having me, and I hope you have some ideas.
Thanks, Gwenny. I think that was a very informative talk. Pretty useful things there. I guess, yeah, we have come towards the end of the meetup. One thing I wanted to announce was we're looking for speakers. So if you have anything even mildly related to Google Cloud or GCP, just ping me over LinkedIn or anywhere that you can find me. I guess the next meetup is going to be in around a month's time or so. So for that, we'll need speakers. And yeah, that was the last thing that I wanted to add. Anything else? That's it. I guess there's a bit more food outside, so enjoy the food and networking. Thanks for coming.